Wuthering Heights by Emily Brontë. The wind howled across the Yorkshire moors, a wild, mournful cry that seemed to echo the restless spirits of Wuthering Heights. In 1801, I, Mr. Lockwood, a gentleman seeking solitude after a failed romance, arrived at Thrushcross Grange, a rented manor in this desolate corner of England. My landlord, Heathcliff, a dark, brooding figure with eyes that burned like embers, lived at Wuthering Heights, a rugged farmhouse perched on a hill, battered by the elements. Curiosity drew me to visit him, but my first encounter was strange. His household was a chaotic mix of surly servants, a young woman named Catherine, and a rough youth called Hareton, all under Heathcliff's grim authority. The place felt haunted, not by ghosts, but by something heavier, a palpable weight of sorrow and rage. That night, trapped by a snowstorm, I slept in an old oak-paneled room and found a diary scrawled with the name Catherine Earnshaw, Catherine Heathcliff, Catherine Linton. A nightmare followed, a ghostly hand at the window, a child's voice wailing Cathy in the storm. Shaken, I demanded answers from Nellie Dean, the housekeeper at Thrushcross Grange, who had served the Earnshaws and Lintons for decades. Over long winter evenings, she unraveled the tale of Wuthering Heights, a story of love and vengeance that consumed two families across generations. It began in the 1770s, when old Mr. Earnshaw, master of Wuthering Heights, brought home a ragged, dark-skinned orphan he found in Liverpool's streets, naming him Heathcliff. The boy was wild, sullen, but fiercely loyal to Earnshaw, who favored him over his own children, Hindley and Catherine. Catherine, a spirited girl with a fiery temper, formed an inseparable bond with Heathcliff. Roaming the moors together, their souls entwined in a love that seemed to defy the world. Hindley, however, despised the interloper, and when Mr. Earnshaw died, Hindley, now master, degraded Heathcliff to a servant, beating him and denying him education. Yet Catherine and Heathcliff's love grew, untamed as the moors, until a fateful day when Catherine, injured while trespassing at Thrushcross Grange, was taken in by the refined Linton family. There, she met Edgar Linton, a gentle, fair-haired boy who offered her a world of elegance and stability, so different from Heathcliff's rough passion. Catherine, torn between her wild heart and the allure of social respectability, confessed to Nellie that she loved Heathcliff but could never marry him. He was too low, too wild. "He's more myself than I am," she said, her voice breaking. "Whatever our souls are made of, his and mine are the same." But Edgar's wealth and status won her, and she accepted his proposal, believing she could lift Heathcliff up with her new position. Unbeknownst to her, Heathcliff overheard this confession, but not her declaration of love, only her dismissal of him as beneath her. Wounded to his core, he vanished from Wuthering Heights that night, leaving Catherine in despair. 3 years passed. Catherine married Edgar Linton and moved to Thrushcross Grange, where she played the part of a refined lady, though her spirit chafed. Hindley, meanwhile, had married a frail woman named Frances, who bore him a son, Hareton, before dying soon after. Grief drove Hindley to drink and gambling, turning Wuthering Heights into a place of chaos, where young Hareton grew up neglected, more beast than boy. Then, one stormy night, Heathcliff returned, transformed, wealthy and hardened, his eyes glittering with a vengeful purpose. Catherine was overjoyed, but Edgar, sensing danger, distrusted the man whose presence seemed to darken the air. Heathcliff took up residence at Wuthering Heights, exploiting Hindley's debts to gain power over the estate. He also began visiting Isabella Linton, Edgar's naive sister, who was infatuated with his dangerous allure. Catherine saw through Heathcliff's charm, warning Isabella, but her own obsession with him strained her marriage. Tensions boiled over when Heathcliff and Catherine's reunion sparked a fierce argument with Edgar. Catherine, tormented by her divided heart, locked herself in her room, falling into a feverish delirium. As she raved about her childhood with Heathcliff on the moors, Heathcliff himself eloped with Isabella, not out of love, but to spite Edgar and secure a claim to the Linton fortune. Isabella soon discovered Heathcliff's cruelty, suffering under his cold, abusive rule at Wuthering Heights. Catherine, meanwhile, grew weaker, her pregnancy complicating her illness. In a final, desperate meeting, Heathcliff and Catherine clung to each other, their love as fierce and destructive as ever. "I am Heathcliff," she gasped, but the strain was too much. That night, Catherine gave birth to a daughter, also named Catherine, and died hours later, leaving Heathcliff to howl his grief to the moors. Heathcliff's vengeance only deepened. Isabella fled to London, where she bore Heathcliff's son, Linton, a sickly, petulant boy. Hindley died soon after, drowning in debt and drink, leaving Wuthering Heights to Heathcliff, who raised Hareton in ignorance and servitude, denying him the education and status of an Earnshaw. Years passed, and young Cathy Linton grew up at Thrushcross Grange under Edgar's care, a bright but sheltered girl unaware of her mother's history. Isabella died, and Heathcliff brought the frail Linton Heathcliff to Wuthering Heights, treating him with contempt, yet plotting to use him. When Cathy was 13, she wandered to the Heights and met Hareton, now a rough, uneducated youth, and Linton, her cousin. Heathcliff saw an opportunity. He encouraged a romance between Cathy and Linton, manipulating the boy's weakness to lure Cathy to Wuthering Heights. Edgar, now ill and grieving his wife's memory, could not protect Cathy from Heathcliff's schemes. Heathcliff forced Cathy to marry Linton, imprisoning her at Wuthering Heights while Edgar lay dying. Linton, too weak to resist his father, complied, but died soon after, leaving Cathy a widow under Heathcliff's control. Edgar's death followed, and Heathcliff seized Thrushcross Grange, making Cathy a servant in her own home. Hareton, despite his rough exterior, showed kindness to Cathy, but she scorned him, seeing only his ignorance. Heathcliff, meanwhile, was haunted by Catherine's ghost, his obsession consuming him. He wandered the moors at night, calling her name, his soul bound to hers even in death. This was the state of things when I, Lockwood, arrived. Nellie's tale explained the misery I'd sensed at Wuthering Heights, Heathcliff's tyranny, Cathy's defiance, Hareton's awkward loyalty. I left for London soon after, unable to bear the gloom, but returned 8 months later in 1802. To my astonishment, Wuthering Heights had changed. Heathcliff was dead, Nellie told me, his end as strange as his life. He had grown increasingly erratic, refusing food, haunted by visions of Catherine. One night, he was found dead in the old oak-paneled room, the window open, a smile on his face, as if he'd finally joined her. The moors folk whispered of their ghosts walking together, hand in hand. Cathy and Hareton, now free, had found their own peace. She taught him to read, softening his rough edges, and their budding love healed the wounds of their family's past. Wuthering Heights, once a place of torment, began to breathe again. As I stood by the graves of Heathcliff, Catherine, and Edgar, marked by simple stones on the moor, I felt the wind soften, as if the storm that had raged for decades had finally passed. The moors stretched endless before me, wild and free, guarding their secrets in silence.